Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to yet another panel today on the Comic Art Live channel during the fun weekend that we've been having here, buying original comic art and talking to comic art creators. I'm not going to be moderating this panel, but John Siuntres is having a few problems, so he's rebooting his computer. So I'm going to welcome to the guest of the moment, Paul Kupperberg. It's nice to have you on the show today, Paul.
Good. Nice to be here. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. We only just met a few moments ago, but
Yes.
yeah, this is like I mentioned, this is our 5th show, so we've been having a lot of fun with these, and I just appreciate anybody who's willing to take the time out on a busy weekend to hang out with us and talk about comics.
It's 93. He's going anywhere, so glad to be here.
Well, I'm in Florida, so it's about 93 here as well. Where are you based?
But that's like.
I understand. So Paul, I know that one of the things that John wanted to talk to you about was some of your more memorable collaborations in comics over the years. I mean, I'm sure we could talk just about anybody, but your career in comics is expansive, and so I'm sure you've got a lot of fun stories about artists and other writers that you've gotten to work with and editors. But I mean, on the artist side of things, I mean, who are some of the more memorable people that you've collaborated with?
Wow. Well, I have been, truly lucky. I got into the comics professionally in 1975, and I'd been a fan for, involved in fanzines and fandom for a few years before that. But when I got in 1975, the comic book industry was still only 40 years old.
Mm-hmm. So
all the 20 and 30-year-olds who invented comic books, lots of them were still alive and working. So I was fortunate to, eventually get to have guys like Gil Kane and Jack Kirby and, what's his name? Bill Evans, from EC Comics,
Sure.
drew a story.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, just all these Carmine Infantino for Irv Novick. Irv Novick, created The Shield in 1939, and he's drawing my my little Robin the Boy Wonder stories in 1978 still. So so it was a fantastic time, and those are my heroes. Those are the guys that I was raised on, reading comics in the 60s and through the 70s until I started. So, to be able to see my scripts translated by them onto the page, was like, I remember the first time, Win Mortimer,
Mm-hmm.
a legendary guy, a guy who for a decade was DC's main cover artist,
Right.
Not, an important position, it's been guys like, Nick Cardy and Neal Adams have filled those posts. So, that role over the years. So, I mean, it's tough to think of people that I didn't work with back then, which is a lovely thing.
No, I can't imagine what it would feel like to be able to work with your heroes, growing up and just, you've enjoyed their books for so long, and then you get to actually work with them and get to see them take your stories and put them into sequential artworks. I mean, that's just got to be an amazing feeling.
Oh yeah, I mean, imagine I wrote a Superpowers miniseries, and at the time I wrote, it was full script. We had I don't think we didn't know who was going to draw it, and the next thing I know, I'm looking at Jack Kirby pages, based drawn from my script. So that's kind of like a moment. It's a super fanboy moment, and it's been repeated a lot in my career. Gil Kane drew a Green Lantern Corps annual that I wrote with Len Wein. Another
that would be amazing.
Yeah,
it wasn't. I was always more of a Marvel guy, but I actually remember picking up Superpowers because I love the logo on the book, and the covers were always very just eye catching. And so that was
he knew how to draw a cover.
He did. He really did. You know, back then I wasn't as a big a fan of his work, but I agree with you. His covers were always, you know, they sucked you in, and there was something about those books. I really enjoyed them.
Oh, great! You know, it's you know, I look back at them now, and you know, I kind of rationalize it as being my chance to kind of do like a traditional JLA story. You know, the old school Gardner Fox JLA. You know, breaking the chapters with the individual guys going off and, you know, their missions. So even though it said superpowers on the cover, as far in my head, it was always, you know, Justice League of America. You know, that I was writing.
Right.
That was a favorite. So it was you know, just another notch in that, you know, fanboy wish list. So.
Well, you're very, very fortunate, and you're at a really came in at a great time, you know, in comics too at that period. I mean, people were trying a lot of new things. You had a lot of really great artists were starting during that time period.
Yeah.
You know, I think that you know, that was I was born in '68, so I wasn't reading a lot of those. I really didn't start collecting until around '76 or '75, but you know, the comics back then were just so much fun, so adventurous. I mean, they really, I mean, as much as they spirit you away to other places today, I mean, back as a young kid, those books that were coming out in the mid '70s, always, you know, in late '60s that I was reading later, were just amazing. I mean, it was such a fun time, and really made me the comic book reader and art collector that I am today. If it wasn't for those books, I wouldn't be doing it.
Well, it was kind of a tipping point. The mid '70s there. It was the generational shift of creators really starting to come into, you know, force. You know, you started in the late '60s. You had Roy Thomas came in, then Len Wein and Marv Wolfman and you know, Steve Englehart and whatever. You know, so you had Mike Friedrich. You had these guys coming in, a lot of them from fandom, comics fandom. And kind of, you know, so Roy starts writing, you know, stand titles at some point. And then, you know, over at DC, you've got, you know, Bob Haney replaced, and Bob Kanigher is everybody named Bob was being replaced. It was a Bob for all. It was awful. But there was just, you know, so all the younger guys were coming in, you know, Wrightson and Kaluta and you know, yada yada yada, Chaikin, yeah. So
yeah, they were all there in the early '70s, right? I mean,
right.
Howard, Carl Potts. I mean, there was a lot of guys that were just getting started.
Sure. I was, you know, in fact, I've been a project I'm working on right now is a book of interviews with people from that era about, you know, when we first broke into comics and what it was like and who was out there and who was doing what and the people we knew. And, you know, I mean, it sounds kind of corny, but when I started writing for DC in 1975, and I could suddenly, you know, go in anytime I wanted and be at DC Comics. And there was, you know, Julie Schwartz and Murray Boltinoff and you know, Jack Adler and all these guys. And I could just be there. I belonged there now. And it was, you know, I had been such a fan growing up that there was like, it was, you know, like magic. You know, it was that place that I never dreamt I could be a part of. And now I was inside it, you know. So it was a really special time. And I think a lot of us, especially guys who came up through, you know, comic fandom in the late '60s and early '70s, and who, you know, shifted over and turned professional. You know, we all had that kind of like, you know, wow, you know, this disbelief that we were actually there. So, you know, I'd like to, you know, kind of see what was going on for other people, my contemporaries. So,
well, we're getting a few questions in the chat. King's Portal was asking what was your favorite character to write back then?
Superman. I mean, I you know, Superman was my first and remains so. He's the character that sucked me into comics originally through the 1940s Fleischer cartoons, which were shown on some kids show that I watched, when I was, 4 and 5 years old. But it was on from 7 to 7:30, and I went to bed after it was over. So, I went to bed dreaming of Superman cartoons, and then I found the comic books, and here I am now, poor wretch, 60 plus years later.
Yeah. What do you think of comic books today? That was a question from the same person. I mean, as far as comparative to those books when you first started writing, I mean, how do you see the stories that are being told today as in relation to those stories back in the mid 70s?
It's a very different. I came to a conclusion a while back that I am not the intended audience for current comics. I'm sure it's great stuff, but it's not my Superman. It's something else. It's moved on to something I don't recognize. Again, I'm not making any kind of quantitative judgment on it. It's just, because I am literally, like the current music, I am not the audience. I ain't buying, but please enjoy.
Right. No, I get it. I don't read comics today as much as I did, in the 80s and 90s as well. And in a lot of weird ways, it's part of, all the times that they've relaunched characters and rebrand them a bit differently. I never really thought about it too much. I don't know if that's why I stopped reading comics as much, the current comics, as I did in the past, but that probably plays a bit of a role in it. You can only see your favorite group get rebooted so many times, and then they don't become that group that you were a fan of when you were reading them originally, or maybe the second time they were rebooted, or when they split them off. And you know what I mean? Because I was a big X-Men fan, so I can. How many times can you redo that book and change those characters' origins?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people have an unlimited tolerance for for all these reboots and shifts and changes, and that's cool. But even back at Crisis on Infinite Earth, I was going, but why? But again, it's moved on, and so have I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a question from Stephen Commander. They asked, when did you stop becoming a fan? After Crisis? Was it that kind of a shakeup that maybe was the beginning of your change in view of where comics were at?
Well, no. I mean, I was continuing to read comics into the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
I was an editor at DC from 91 to 2006.
Yes.
And so naturally I kept up with our stuff. Although it hadn't gotten that kind of the changes were being made, and they were happening, Identity Crisis and all these all these stunts. At some point, some readers grow tired of that. But if I had been continued on staff at DC, I would have continued reading the stuff, because again, that's part of the job.
Sure.
I worked for a while for the WWE. So I watched wrestling. God save me. Not just in general, and really, it's going to, but I really stopped reading when I started to have to pay for them. At some
they
point,
became very expensive in the last 15 years, haven't they?
Plus, I had spent my entire life getting comic books.
Mm-hmm.
I had to buy some stuff, of course, at stores, but I would get these bundles of books, and in fact, when I had a house, they were stacked up in bags in the garage, because it's like, what do we do with them? And the answer is, you trade them in at the comic shop for credit, and then you don't have to pay for them. So as long as I wasn't,
the perks, who would have known?
Yeah. But once I had to start paying for it, it's like, man, my first comic books were 10 and 12 cents. I can't pay $4.99 for a comic book. It hurts.
No, I hear you. It's you have to make choices at that point. It's whether you're going to have lunch or you're going to buy a comic book.
Yeah, or send your kid to college.
Yeah, I know all about that. I just got one out of college and one in college, and one will be in college in a year and a half. So I know exactly where you're at.
Good luck, my friend.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Hey, John. Well, welcome to the panel.
I'm sorry I'm late, guys.
No,
Slow
not a
computer
problem.
reboot. But no, I've been enjoying the conversation. And Paul, good to see you. And Bill,
Good.
great weekend, great panels and stuff, and great art.
Thank you so much, man.
Congratulations. Absolutely, man. So yeah, Paul, you mentioned a couple great collaborators, and also the fact that when you broke in, a lot of these great veterans were still, working with you and stuff. Were they ever like, hey kid, I know what I'm doing. Relax. I mean, how much interaction did you have with some of those greats, and was it more difficult with the older artists in terms of collaboration?
Well, I've said this before. Back then, collaboration was a very broad term for what we did. Writers wrote scripts, turned them into the editor turned it over to an artist. And unless it was some, ongoing thing that that was going on, maybe, and frankly, I don't think Steve Englehart consulted with Marshall Rogers about, the Batman scripts he wrote.
Okay.
So, it was like we were each in our own compartment. The interaction was mainly, like some guy, I remember the time I met Win Mortimer.
Please, yes.
He was drawing the Supergirl strip in Superman Family that I was writing. And, Julie, the pages were in, and they were on Julie's desk, and I was kind of looking at him, and Julie kind of twits me about, probably not liking this old-fashioned art. And I'm like, are you kidding? This is Win Mortimer. Jeez, I love this stuff. Blah, blah. And then, of course, 3 minutes later, while I'm gushing, Julie goes, "Yeah, did you hear that?" And I turn around, and Win Mortimer standing behind me. He had just delivered those pages,
Wow.
But he got to hear it, like unfiltered, me talking to my editor, and this guy is great. So, I had interactions like that. There were some guys who worked in the office a lot. Tex Blaisdell, Bill Drought, I remember in particular. Both wonderful. I mean, they were just great guys. They were funny. They were friendly. They were often intoxicated. But it was, after lunch, man, you sit in the bullpen and just hang out with these guys and, talk, Tex talking about Harold Gray or whatever, and,
Wow.
So there were guys like that who were around. I used to see David V. Reed, a lot because I was on staff, and my cubicle, I didn't work for Julie, but my cubicle was near Julie's office. So Dave would just hang out, and I'd shoot the breeze with him. But little bits like that, you just you just suddenly find yourself in conversation. And here I am, I'm sitting in Ross Andrews' office, and we're talking about the conspiracy by the Masons.
The Freemasons?
The Freemasons, yes.
Okay.
Ross was a believer, apparently.
Wow.
Yes.
And forgive me, but I also know, and it was funny, I was just talking about this the other day with somebody, and Otto Binder was a big believer in, for the ghost hunters, for the audience and everything, the white noise, and supposedly you could hear spirits. And I know Mark Evanier would talk about how he would visit Otto Binder, and he would play him tapes and go, "Yeah, you hear that little surface noise? That's a ghost." And it's like, all right, man.
A lot of that going around, a lot of people. I mean, Ross was one of the sweetest guys, you could ever hope to meet. He was just funny and nice, and and he drew a story of mine. There's another guy. He drew a Vigilante annual.
Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, that was your Adrian Chase Vigilante, obviously from the 80s. Yeah. I'm assuming. That's fantastic, man. Yes. Oh, good Lord. Your run on Vigilante, of course. You did some great Peacekeeper stories, and certainly Peacekeeper's been on our minds lately with the streaming show and the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Somebody wanted King's Portal. wanted some Neal Adams stories, and I was going to ask you about Neal and any interactions too with George Perez, given that we just lost both of those guys. And of course, we talk about interesting hobbies or frames of mind. Of course, Neal had his expanding Earth, the growing Earth kind of theory that he believed in very seriously.
I don't know how seriously he believed in that. I think it was like a movie idea that he had.
That's interesting. Wow.
Because you know what?
Tell
Neal
me.
was a lot of things, but he wasn't a schmuck. You know? And I was always convinced, he doesn't give a crap. So he's gonna talk about this. He's gonna pull people's leg. But I don't
You were
think
killing me.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Because it's funny. I was talking to Art Baltazar Friday night, and he brought up Art is like fascinated by the whole Bigfoot thing, and he asked Neal. He goes, "Do you what do you think about Bigfoot?" And he said, "All right, sit down." So he sat next to him while Neal was signing books, and he goes, "Listen, I don't necessarily believe in Bigfoot, but I believe in the possibility of Bigfoot." And it's like, all right.
Yeah. Listen. And as a former editor and writer for the Weekly World News, I share that sentiment. Batboy, however, met him. Okay. But Neal was, I've known Neal a long time. My brother used to work up at Continuity. They developed an enmity towards one another that was pretty fierce. But Neal was always very sweet to me. He was always very nice to me. Even as a kid, when I was at conventions and stuff. And later on, we passed each other a lot of conventions and at the offices at DC, especially when I was first coming up there, in the mid '70s. He was heavily involved doing all those covers or the 80-page giants and all that stuff.
Yes.
He was like the guy. I passed him. He comes rushing out of an office. He's got a Polaroid camera on his neck in his portfolio. And he just passed me with a wave or whatever. And then he stops and he turns around and he goes, "Hey, did I take your picture yet?" "No, were you supposed to?" He goes, "Shut up, stand against the wall." So, I shut up and I stood against the wall, and Nick took a Polaroid and, then he takes off. And that's how I wound up on the cover of the Muhammad Ali versus Superman comic.
Oh, that's excellent. Sure. Wow. That's awesome, man.
He didn't have to include me.
Who do you know? Do you remember who you were next to in the big group shot?
Yeah, I'm next to Steve Mitchell. Betty Ford is near me. I think I'm like number 83 on the chart. I remember once one of the I think it was Superman Returns, was waiting online on I think we were on Broadway or 30 whatever theater we were waiting to see the DC Warner's preview, and I'm there in line, we're waiting to get in, and Neal comes hurrying by, and he sees me, he waves, he goes, "The not evil Koppenberg brother." So
I know it. One night we're gonna have to have drinks, and I'm gonna have to hear more stories about your evil brother. I understand, man. God, we got great questions. Steve Commander wants to know, what did you think of the Arion characters in Young Justice?
I've only seen the first one of them, but yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I always wanted to bring old Arion back in a serious superhero context. Back in the days, we did an Arion the Immortal miniseries with it was edited by Christopher Priest and art by Arville Jones, and but it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on grumpy old Arion, spending his days feeding pigeons in the park and hanging out at Mortal Enemy's deli, Lower East Side.
That's outstanding. King's Portal wants you to know he loved your Doom Patrol and Phantom Stranger.
Thank
I
you.
agree on all that. And man, that was terrific that they managed to get your Doom Patrol characters into the first season of the series and everything. I thought that was great. And I don't
Yeah.
know how you felt about it, but I really liked it.
It's, you know, it's surreal to see stuff that, you know, that I thought of 40 years ago. And suddenly it's like, you know, turned up on the screen. It's, you know, ideas and characters and all that. You know, even seeing Arion and the descendants of the other characters on Young Justice, it's like, well, that's pretty cool. You know, that's you know, there's a little bit of legacy in there. It's not just, you know, it's not just you know, the disposable paper.
So who were because again, you were in New York and you were at the offices. Who would you hang out with as far as the bullpen and everything? Or did you hang out with guys in the bullpen?
Yeah, we hung out. You know, mostly I was a freelancer, so you know, but
Yeah.
you know, there was Jack Harris, Tony Isabella, Carl
Sure.
Gafford worked there, Tony Quinn. A lot of these guys, and I mentioned the book I'm working on now.
Yeah.
Before you think, but you know, these are the guys who we all came up together, and I want to, you know, I want to get those memories, you know, out there. But yeah, a lot of guys like that. We would, guys, there's a guy named Bob Toomey, who was an artist, who was a writer briefly, and you know, I recently got in touch with him. We got in touch again via social media, and you know, he went to computers and all that stuff and left comics. But you know, I still want to hear his story. You know, you know, he was a friend of Denny's, I think, because yeah, right. When we got, I had my pocket picked by a gaggle of transvestite hookers on Lexington Avenue while we were walking downtown. It was. We were going to Denny's apartment where he was staying. This was New York City, 1977. It
You know,
was,
yeah.
you know.
Well, no, say it. No, by all means, man. No, because again, it wasn't the Disneyland of, you know, Times Square back then. And how Chicken and I have talked about this as well. Do you remember that just a year or two ago, that HBO show about the porno industry? And it was like,
oh yeah, yeah. Deuce.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it. The Deuce.
The
That's
Deuce.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but Howard always said, he's like, I don't know. I keep looking for myself in the background. It's so authentic, you know. And I'm sure you felt the same way.
It was Howard was a few years older than me and had more advanced experience there than I think. I just used to go there to buy dope.
There you go. Exactly. All right. Very good. Very good. Yes. Harry Warp. And yes, I wanted to get into this. He loves your direct comments book. Is it comments or currents?
It's direct comments, I believe.
Oh, there you go, sir. Hold on. Let me zoom in it for you, Paul. There you go. Boom. Yes, of course. Yes. And talk about the background on that. And truly, I did want to get into it. We've talked about it before on WordBalloon, but we've got you know, comic fan art viewers watching us now as well. But give us the background on that, because truly, this is terrific. This thing you've done.
Well, back in throughout the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s, I wrote more on than off the versions of the Direct Currents newsletter that DC used to distribute through comic shops. I worked on the original version of it that was, you know, four-page, 11 by 17 Xerox on different colored stock, folded over, you know. So I would write the listings and the stories of, you know, about, you know, a special event, that special event. And over the years, this thing evolved. And in I guess around 87 or 88 or whatever it was, they relaunched it as Direct Currents, DC Direct Currents, and it was a comic book size and printed on slick Mando paper. and it was like 16 pages, and it was each issue had feature stories again about upcoming events in the books, plus the monthly listings of what was coming up. And one of the regular features was called People at Work. And for that, I would conduct an interview with one of the headliners of the month. You know, there was a new Batman project coming up, so I would talk to Danny O'Neil, who was writing it. And then I would take those interviews, transcribe them, and pick and choose quotes from them to write the feature article. Most cases, I would use maybe a third or less than half of the interview, but so most of them just got filed away on a disc, literally a 3.5-inch disc, which I found. And I also had a disc reader still that was compatible. And I was able to salvage like 20 of the raw transcripts of the over 90 of these that I conducted.
Wow.
Yeah. So I, took a good look at them and, gave them a good edit and footnoted them extensively, because I realized the book was from, like 30 years ago, talking about events that took place 30 or 40 years before that sometimes. So anyway, so it's heavily annotated, but it's interviews with Murphy Anderson, Jim Aparo, Brian Bolland, John Byrne, Chuck Dixon, Dick Giordano, Mike Grell, Carmen Infantino, Lee Mars, Denny O'Neil, Kurt Schaffenberger, Julie Schwartz, and I also had interviews. I had done a fanzine interview with my friend Carl Gafford back in the I guess early 70s. We went to Murphy's studio where he was producing PS Magazine and all that stuff, and conducted this long interview with him, only half of which survives. But I print that, and I also print a 1971 interview that was in an early fanzine from me and Paul Levitz with the ever lovable Jim Warren of Warren Publishing.
Indeed. That's excellent. Walt Simonson. I'm looking at the Amazon page for direct comments, and it's available digitally as a Kindle, but it's also available as a paperback, and very reasonable, dude. And I love it. So
also,
is the
by the way, directly from me via PayPal, $20 PayPal payable to PayPal.me/Paul Kupperberg, and I will sign and personalize and send it your way.
That's excellent, man. No, truly, you've really been prolific, as far as cranking out both fiction and certainly how-to books as well. How to some great tutorials on how to write comics. Here, I'll zoom in. Stand by, Paul. Boom. Indeed, Paul Kupperberg's Illustrated Guide to Writing Comics. Absolutely, very, very cool. Who did the art for that, Paul? Or are they samples of your stories? Say it again.
The cover art is Steve Butler.
Oh, excellent! Outstanding, man. No, it's been great. Are you? Oh, yeah, I'm Steve. Sorry. Okay, because your mic cut out for a second.
Oh.
Steve Butler, very cool. And Peter Rowe wants you to repeat that email address again to buy and get a book signed.
Well, yeah, it's PayPal, so you can either do PayPal.me/Paul Kupperberg, one name, or you can just do pkupperberg@gmail.com via PayPal, and they'll both get to me.
Okay, man. And your website, of course, paulkupperberg.com.
Yes.
For the blog. And I mean, again, you found these discs of these interviews, and we've talked about it before. Thank God you never threw anything away, Paul, because good Lord,
really.
You're really the archivist of a lot of great comic book history and amazing stuff, whether it's strips or proposals for potential stories, and God, those great annuals that they made for the British audience.
Yeah,
and they would have prose stories alongside comic stories, and some of those were written by some.
Yeah, they were written by Grant Morrison and Neal Gaiman. Did Neal do some? I don't know, but it would be like all these guys who would John Wagner creator of co-creator of Judge Dredd.
Absolutely.
Alan Grant, and it'd be just these like 3 and 4 page prose stories in the middle of these reprints of American Superman stories. But so I had a bunch of those, and I scanned them in and put them up because they're too good not to share.
So true. So, man, compare those stories to those 2-page stories from the golden age that that were just like fluff that they would put in just to get the mail rate
Right.
to qualify as a magazine.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
Yeah,
that was that's
well,
so
that postal regulation made me a lot of money when I was first starting, because instead they would replace the prose stories with letter columns. So when I started out, I was writing the letter columns for House of Mystery and House of Secrets and Men at War and whatever, all these Plastic Man, whatever. So
let's talk about that for a second. I didn't realize that. Here's something we've never talked about before. I've noticed in some of the 70s and 80s war comics that I've picked up that veterans would actually chime in. I mean, tell me about the kind of letters. I mean, obviously you get those from kids that were reading and stuff, but yeah, tell me about the various kind of letters you would look at the letter column.
Well, it was everything from literally, crayons to crazies. It was, I mean, most of them were, just flat out, I like issue number 27. Thank you very, and
sure.
Nice to hear. By the time, Marvel, well, not Marvel, Julie started really the letter columns in the superhero books in the 60s, and, complete with printing full addresses so that fans could get in touch with each other.
Yes.
By the, mid 70s, like, every book had a letter column, and the problem was not every book got letters. So
yeah, what'd you have to do to fill the page? You made up letters.
Yeah.
Sure.
I had a few names of regulars that wrote in, a guy named Frank A. Nelson. Check out the initials. So but I Frank New York, and so like that. Sometimes you just had to make it up to fill the page. But a lot of times there was plenty to work with. The House of Mystery kind of books got a good bunch of mail. And I know like Bob Kanigher and stuff, you could, and Murray Boltinoff. Murray had very distinctive letter columns. He wouldn't always print. He would print 1 or 2 full letters, but then he would do a whole shitload of excerpts from other letters. And it was like, that's brilliant. I should have stolen that from him, because it gets a lot of names in the book, and you could use material that otherwise, there's a whole letter. There's nothing here, but this one sentence is good, So, but anyway, it was a thing, it was kind of like, you'd ask friends passing by, write a letter. What should I say? It doesn't matter. Just write a letter. But you got page rate for it, So
that's great, man. Well, and also, hey, we bought as readers, we believed it. I mean, and it really was it was the social media of its day when you think about it.
Sure. I mean, fanzines were, the only way of communication. Otherwise, and things like APAs, amateur press alliances, where, people exchanged their individual contributions via a central mailer, every month or 2, whatever the rules called for. But, I was briefly a member of Kappa Alpha, the premier comic book APA. And then I belonged to NIAPA, which was the New York APA.
Okay.
By a friend of mine at Brooklyn College, Chuck Spanier.
And man, great amateur artists and writers as well. A name I remember was it Grass Green? Wasn't that one of the a pseudonym for one of the guys?
Yeah, he was earlier than me in fandom.
Sure.
In fact, he did do professional work. I think didn't he just die?
I couldn't say, and I guess he's more of that Bill Shelley era of fandom. I'm assuming.
Yeah, they were first fandom.
Yes.
I was like 2 point wave. Yeah, it was 2.5. Coming in around 71. Levitz and I started doing a new zine called Etc. To replace Don and Maggie Thompson's retiring WordBalloon. Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Where do you think I got my inspiration? Absolutely, man. I hope they're not mad at me.
That's where. Yeah. No, I think Don was always deeply embarrassed that he gave us our start. He did. We did this crappy little new zine, we gave away more copies than we sold of the first issue, but we sent it to Don and Maggie, and Don gave it this really nice review, and all of a sudden we was getting subscriptions. So he called us a worthy replacement.
Wow.
So so Don.
Yeah.
And Maggie.
That's fantastic, man. That's excellent. And I love, zines obviously came back big in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, in fact, like great bookstore in Chicago that does sell comics, but they do a lot of counterculture stuff as well. It's called Quimby's. And they still, they still do zines. And I love talking to Matt Fraction was a big zine guy. Other current creators were big zine people. Brubaker.
Noah
Yes, Noah, absolutely. God, I'm so glad you mentioned Noah. I like Noah a lot. It's it's really kind of interesting. Kind of like the return of vinyl. That despite blogs and everything online, that zines are still kind of out there and stuff. And like I said, Brubaker. Talked about zines.
My son was in the music, into the whole music thing while he was in college, which he graduated 4 years ago today.
Wow.
During high school and college, and he was amazed at the parallels between the comic scene, the comic fandom and the music fandom in the use of fanzines and things like that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's good. They're great.
Matt.
They fostered this creativity. They certainly they taught us about deadlines. We had a monthly zine to get out, and we had subscribers waiting for it. It was damn good training ground. You just threw yourself into it. You tried stuff. I mean, we were literally working with non-pro blue pages, gridded pages, and glue sticks and typewriters and X-Acto knives. That was it.
And mimeographs. Were you putting the alcohol in the mimeograph and cranking them to make mimeographs?
We didn't do that for Etc. That was photo offset. But I earned my I was a ditto guy because my Carl Gafford had a ditto machine. So so Carl would run off my zines. But yeah, absolutely. I was cutting stencils. Although Carl was like, man, this guy could draw on a stencil, on a ditto stencil. There were a handful of guys who just, with different patterns and stuff, different colored stencils. They could do amazing stuff on this crappy little, medium that ran out of juice after less than 100 copies.
Man, talk about buying dope. You get high off the alcohol that you would put in those old ditto machines and stuff.
I wrote a fan story about that happening.
Did you?
Some Apple story where the kid he's out of the ditto fluid, so he uses his parents' vodka instead, and anyway. But like I'm talking, we are talking an ancient language here.
Absolutely, man. This is just after Gutenberg when you think about it. Absolutely, man.
I remember I was in DC's pre-production department, which we used to call the production department. It was like but now it's all computers and everything is scanned and da da da.
Of course.
And so I'm waiting for some the guys to do some scanning of pages for me for something. And he one of the other technicians, he's working on the pages. He goes, "Hey, you've been here a long time. What's that?" And he points to this little machine on the shelf. And I go, oh yeah, that's a waxer. And he goes, "What?" I said, it's a hot waxer. You use it to paste up. It would run it through and be a layer of hot wax, and you would paste it. And he was like blank looks. I go, it's what we started using after what do you call it? The rubber cement. You know,
Sure.
This
Sure.
replaced rubber cement.
Unbelievable, man. Yeah.
I'm just gonna go stand in the corner and be old. See you later. Yeah.
Stop. No. Good Lord. Paul, I had to take a communications class in college 35 years ago for like small press media, and it was all those machines and stuff, and now completely obsolete. I was so yeah, I believe, and also how in radio, I was still working with reel to reels and splicing tape and razor blades
Sure.
and my China marker to mark where I was going to edit. And, so yeah, no, I understand, buddy. Totally.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Very funny. It was different. It was, well, again, that's why I'm excited for this new book that you're writing, to talk about what it was like back then. Because truly, we want to know the stories, and we really want to get it, from, you'll forgive me, the horse's mouth, so,
it really hit me, recently with, we've lost so many people, it's like, my first thought, when I came up with the idea for the book was like, and I'm going to get Marty Pasco to be my first, oh, fuck,
I know, man. I know. Just 2 years. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. Dude, I hear you. And truly,
I don't want to miss any other guys, So I'm talking to Bob Rozakis and Jack Harris this week. Paul, Levitz and I will be sitting down for a talk. Lining up some other people now, and I really, it's like I have it here because I was reading it while I was waiting to go online.
Great book, please.
It was a great book, and I started looking at it in preparation for my interviews, and I realized that this is what I want to do. I want to bring that same attention to detail, the same feel that to the Bronze Age that Will did to the Golden Age.
100%.
They're fascinating talks, and
Yes.
like Gil Kane. What a pompous ass. Loved him, but he was. But but now I'm old enough to and experienced enough to read his pomposity and see through it and see what he's actually talking about. And what he's talking about is his conceptualization was brilliant. He was a deep thinker, and this stuff didn't come out of just like, oh, I got to fill the page. And I want to, I hope I'll be able to pass some of that along with some of the talks with people I do. So
I understand, man. The Comics Journal had some amazing chalk talks, that they recorded the audio. And I remember there was a Gil Kane one. I can't remember who he was speaking to. But like you said, I mean, God, Eisner's book, it's great. And I always let people know this. John Cook made a great documentary about Eisner through his imprint, and it's available on Blu-ray. And the bonus features of the DVD or the Blu-ray have the audio interviews that Will did for Shop Talk, and you can actually hear the conversation with Kirby, the conversation with I'm blanking, Terry and the Pirates, and Kniff,
yeah.
They're amazing.
I'm going to be doing these as Zoom calls, so I'm going to be recording them, and they will be used somehow. There will be a public release of them once the book is out. So
That's great to hear. I hope you do make an audio deal alongside the print deal. You know,
well, the print deal is I'm self-publishing because you know what?
oh, there you go. Well, I
You know,
think, again, I think it would be as easy for you to, have the digital files available at your website to purchase as well. You might want to
yes,
consider that.
there is that is an idea. Absolutely. I
See, I'm
will
here to help you.
we'll talk. What's your
We'll
commission?
talk. Exactly. Absolutely, man.
But
No,
yeah,
it's exciting.
you know, it's
I'm
like
so glad.
it's like the Carmine, I mean the Julie Schwartz thing that, it was
The
like
videotape, yes, the VHS tape
yeah,
thank God you took that out of Julie's wastepaper basket. For people who
yes,
don't know,
but
Paul fished out of Julie's office wastepaper basket this great slide presentation that Julie used to travel around with, and thank God somebody videotaped him in I believe was it in Charlotte or
yeah,
Chattanooga. And yeah,
uh,
it's a history of Superman, and it's, oh my God, the photographs and the memories
yeah,
that Julie had, and again, this is from 1988 when it was the 50th anniversary for
the
Superman.
50th
It's a
anniversary. And you get, these Dems know Julie Schwartz delivering the history of Superman. So it's great.
Is
Yeah,
Elfie Besta, my good friend.
and it's something that and it's just something that needs to be out there. It's this is the in very minor ways. I like you say, I try to preserve some of the historical stuff, online and just to see, people are, I found fascinating was that I had, the art board, Marvel and DC art board from the 70s and 80s. And people are like, wow, cool. Wow. It's just a blank piece of artboard, but it's got, the Marvel logo or the DC, whatever it is. And
Sure.
Stationery is interesting, apparently. So, but hey, whatever. It's like, we want to see it, everybody,
Absolutely.
In modern times, everybody wants to see what a Nobel Prize looked like.
That's
Eventually,
exactly what I was going to say. Yes. The no prize, the infamous envelope that was empty, but that's literally, and maybe younger people have heard about the no prize, and it was like you would catch a mistake in a Marvel book, and they would send you an envelope, and again, oh, you're going to get a no prize in the mail, and I mean, you got this great envelope. There was nothing
and
in
it was
it because there was no prize. Yeah. But again, you're right, man. I've seen photos online of no prize envelopes. They are cool, or I've seen them at
yeah.
shows.
And I have
or
this,
please.
instead of the DC didn't send a no prize. DC had printed up in 9-point type this 2-page, this 2-side 8.5 by 11 letter that was pretty much an FAQ. It was frequently asked questions about Superman. And it gave a history of the company and this and that and the other thing. And then it was like, where can I buy the Ben Cooper Superman costumes? Where can I, how do I subscribe to DC Comics? And where does Superman come from? And it was this whole jam-packed, I'm telling you, tiny type. You had to be 11 years old to read it, So, but it was awesome. It was like, keep your no prize, Marvel. This is something. I started reading comics before Marvel existed. So, DC has always been in my heart.
I understand. That's like me with Star Trek and Star Wars. I like Star Wars a lot, but I mean, I had been watching Star Trek for 7 years before Star Wars happened. So I get it.
And 22 when Star Wars happened. So it was like, that's not bad. As far
You're killing me, man. That's fantastic. Have you caught any of the new? Did you watch the Batman movie? Have you seen? What'd you think?
I like Joker. I like the Batman. I like that approach. I like that. It's not that over the top. I mean, it's over the top, of course, but it's not that over the top of the superhero movies of people flying through walls and people still get battered by and stand up again, but hey, that's showbiz, but I like the approach. I like I like the detective. Finally, after 40 years of movies, seeing the detective at work, and
Yes.
but the relation between him and Gordon was like spot on.
Yeah, that was classic. I agree with you.
Yeah,
That's
so
fun.
I thought it was really solid. But I also, I watched the four. I had COVID last week. I was,
Yeah, I know, man. Are you
Yeah.
you doing okay? You recovering?
yeah, it was like it was like a bad cold, and I got the antivirals right away, and so it was like I say, like a bad cold for 4 or 5 days, but so I was kind of quarantined here, and in my office, trying to keep away from everybody else, and so well, what better time to watch the Snyder cut?
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
So talk to me. What'd you think?
I thought nothing. No, I don't think any movie has to be 4 hours long. Let's just start there.
It
But
took me 4 days to watch it, but please continue. Because I was the same way, man. Yeah.
yeah, but I thought I saw what he was building. I understood where he was going. I don't particularly care for his treatment of the characters. I think again, everything's too dark and too, but it's like, oh, I understand now, where he was going, and it was pretty all encompassing. It was
Sure.
pretty much going to be a big DCU monster fest.
Blockbuster. Yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. I mean, again, yeah, I also watched Aquaman, which I thought was okay.
I liked Aquaman. Yeah.
Maybe I was just loopy from being sick, but yeah, it hit the buttons. It kind of like and in that last scene when he comes up in orange and green, it's like, oh yes, because that's Aquaman. That's
Sure.
the guy.
I'm in.
So,
Absolutely, man. No, he's Momoa's a good actor. I'm glad he's Aquaman. He's
yeah, I thought he did a good job, and all the stuff. Again, you can find holes to drive trucks through in any of these movies, and after having written a couple of screenplays myself, I understand why it's so hard to make a comprehensible movie. Just because things get plucked and moved and changed and it's all like that, and suddenly you find a hole that you didn't know existed because of that thing you took out 30 pages ago, whatever. But I figure if I can sit there without my ass itching in the seat, how bad is it?
I'm with you. What were they original ideas, or were they treatments for established characters? Your screenplays?
Oh no. These were done as freelance. Somebody hired me to write up their ideas.
I see. Okay, that's cool.
I would love if one day they were won or produced, but there's not a lot of breath being held. So.
Are you? I know you're part of a collective that does short stories and novels and things.
Yeah.
Did I see recently? Is there a Kickstarter for a
yes.
collection? And are you involved in that short? It's a collection of short stories that are superhero stories, but it's prose. Yeah.
It's called,
so yeah. Talk.
Yeah. It's this is the second volume of the Phenomenons, which is a shared universe of new superhero characters spearheaded by one of the members of Crazy 8 Press, which I'm a member of, Michael Jan Friedman. And Mike, came up with the idea, and this is, again, second volume. My character is called Torque. He's a speedster. And, so we're kind of building this story over the 3 books that we'll eventually do. And it's a lot of fun. It's different. I love writing superheroes in prose. In fact, I'm working on a novel now that I hope I'll have ready for the end of the year, if I can work everything in concert with the interviews book and other projects that have suddenly appeared. Fortunately. But, yeah.
Absolutely, man. No, and we've talked in the past about your great novel. Am I right? The Big Con? Wasn't that your book? The book about the 50s, the comic book, the
Oh, that was the same old story.
same old story. Excuse me. Okay,
Yes,
because
yes.
others
That's
have
a
written.
novel. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, that
novel in the comic book business in the early 1950s, and it's a murder mystery, and the victim was modeled after Bob Kanigher, who probably would have been voted the person most people wanted to kill even back then. But it also, there's a little bit of pastiche in there, and Julie Schwartz kind of appears as my character's Dr. Watson. I put Julie in one scene just as kind of an homage, and then he came back because Schwartz never knows when to leave. So
isn't that great? I've heard other writers say that you've got a plan for a character and they won't shut up in your head, and it's like, all right,
yeah,
I got to write more because this obviously I'm occupied thinking about this character. That's fantastic, man.
it's weird. It's happened a few times. It happened when I was writing Life with Archie, with the Reggie character. I was going to play Reggie as the bro man dude, but apparently he possesses more dignity than I realized, because every time I try to cut him down, he'd go, you know what? No, I can't do this, and walk away. And it was really interesting to me that just kind of I wrote a scene and it was like, no, this is stupid. This isn't Reggie. And I just had to let him go where he was going.
Honestly, I'm so glad you brought up Life with Archie because I loved that series, and it was great to see the entire Riverdale gang grow up and really
Yeah,
be more adult. And I like the Riverdale TV series. That's a lot of fun. But really, what you guys did in the Married Life and that series, God, you're right. Reggie's a serious news reporter
yeah.
and very into his career and has some was it plagiarism? I forget what his legal trouble was that he had to go to court or protect a source.
It was.
I
Oh,
don't.
what was it? I think even murder. I think
Okay,
that
there
was
you go. But
murder.
and Moose. I mean, Moose is running
Moose.
for mayor, and he had his blind girlfriend, like the Thing and Alicia.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that was terrific. I mean, no, it's for people who haven't read Archie the Married Life, truly, and not just because Paul's on. And if you had any love for these characters, the spin you guys put on that stuff was so delightful, and it was like I can't believe I am looking forward to Archie every month. I haven't
Thank
done
you.
that since I was 11 years old. It was fantastic, man.
Yeah, it was just those guys were, once I started writing them, it was just so easy to write. I mean, I'd read them all my life. Even though it was all this was really the first time the characters deviated from the one-off story kind
Sure.
of format, where previous stories had consequences and events continued on. It was an ongoing soap opera. It was just a
Absolutely.
melodrama, but it was largely set in just absolute real world. Except we did that one arc with the alternate dimensions, and that had kind of been left over, and we kind of had to get rid of it. But other than that, everything was just very reality based. It was, and they let me do. I'd come in. We'd have meetings every 6 months to discuss the upcoming arc, and I could come in and go, "Is it okay if I kill Mrs. Grundy?" Yeah, sure, as long as there's a good reason. But we dealt with gun violence and gay marriage and
Yes.
breast cancer. All kinds of
Yes.
issues.
Poor Cheryl Blossom. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no, tragic stuff, man. But again, done in this incredible way and in the Archie style, and it was,
yeah,
it was so
yeah,
great. And yeah, one of
yeah.
your collaborators, the great Norm Brayfogle, was
Norm,
drawing
yeah,
the book.
he
You know,
drew
yeah,
a large part of the beginning of it, and then Fred Ruiz and the Kennedy brothers, came in and did some fabulous work as well. But yeah, it was a great experience. It was one of the best writing experiences I've ever had. It was just, I was given freedom. I was working with characters I liked. And frankly, it wasn't superheroes. It was just nice to be able to step off that, that roller coaster and ride a different one. This is more like the teacups instead of a roller coaster.
I'm hip. Absolutely. As we close, quick question: are you doing any physical conventions this summer or fall?
I am doing a Terrific Con at the end of July and early August. Nothing else planned.
Okay.
I'm still leery of large open spaces with people, but I haven't missed a Mitch Halleck convention since the start. So I'm locked in.
That's excellent. Well, I'll see you there because, of course,
Excellent.
I will be
Looking forward
there
to
as
it.
well and moderating panels and very excited. Again, yeah, that's the end of July, everybody. The last weekend in July at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. So
Yeah.
make sure you say hi to Paul. Make sure you say hi to me. And dude, great conversation as always. PaulKupperberg.com, everybody, to go and purchase the books that Paul has out there and to keep tabs on the new projects that are coming up. So as always, buddy, thank you for talking today.
Thanks a lot, John. Take care.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Keep watching. There are great things. I will be back in less than an hour talking to Mike Gold, basically about a lot of the same his Bronze Age memories. So everybody stay safe.